we have been interested in the subject for a long time, more than 100 years. And in that sense, this is a vital subject that we have taken up for consideration. The government recently changed its policy on use of agrochemicals, and in that context, green agriculture has come to focus in more and more. So we have assembled several countries' top experts on the subjects of interest here, and they will explain to you the intricacies involved, as well as the subject matters of immediate interest to the large population of the country. I'll leave it at that. I'll come in later and during the discussion. Thank you very much. All the best. And may I now mention that our president, Mr. Shanta Senarath, is a very senior engineer, and he has been involved in the OPA for a long time. Before becoming the president of the OPA, he has served as the general secretary also for many years, and before that many years as member of the OPA. May I request Mr. Shanta Senarath to make his presentation. Thank you very much. All the best to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Korale. Good evening to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Raja Korale, the chairman of the OPA Seminars, Workshop and Program Committee. Our long-standing vice president. And he's a member of the International Statistics Institute. So, Mr. President of the Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture, Chairman of the Seminars, Workshop and Program Committee, General Secretary of the OPA, all other office bearers, erudite panelists, moderator, forum members, past presidents, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the OPA, I very warmly welcome all of you to this webinar jointly organized by the Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture and the OPA. I am extremely thankful to Mr. Sisira Kumar, the President of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture, and his executive committee for the leadership taken to organize this very timely webinar, especially at a time all imports of chemical fertilizer and pesticides have been banned by the government. This webinar would serve that purpose because we have a very strong lineup of panelists who are experts in the field of agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, your interaction with the panelists during the question and answer session would definitely bring out more positive results. So, ladies and gentlemen, my best wishes for a successful session. Thank you. Over to the moderator, Mr. Saman Warusitana. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the immediate past president of the OPA, and currently he serves as the vice president in the Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture. Over to Mr. Saman Warusitana, our moderator today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shanta Senarath, the engineer Shanta Senarath, the president OPA, and Mr. Korala, chairman of workshop committee for this the event organized and the Institute of Agriculture. And I thank you very much for inviting me as the moderator. As President mentioned about the background, I must not waste the time, so we are behind the schedule. Busting myths and investing on the reality, the green agriculture model, that is the theme today. You know the background of this seminar. I must mention one thing recently. The Sri Lanka Organization of Professional Association had conducted a very important webinar inviting Professor Malik Piris and gave some strong recommendation to the government. As a result of that seminar, all the executive council gave this very strong recommendation to the government, and all the medical professionals also in the view with regard to COVID-19 pandemic and this wave and serious situation, and we went for a lockdown. So we contributed. I think that is a very important decision that we have made. All the medical professionals and the other professionals in the country together gave a very strong recommendation. As a result of that, we are getting a benefit out of that, I believe, very strongly. And this exercise also today is also one of that, because proactively we have to make some recommendation. This information that you are going to get today with this speakers, panelists, that will be very useful for you to evaluate or analyze the thing and have the correct decision. So this will be useful for the OPA, other professional groups, advocacy groups, general public, to understand what the reality is. So we have lined up here about 5 speakers, very eminent speakers, and they are specialized, they are specialists in their respective fields. They have a very strong technical and academic background. Not only that, but they are well experienced, over more than 20-30 years experience in their respective fields. So we are going to hear the facts and the correct information. Now the time is 6:30. No, sorry. Yeah, but I make this point. When I told the time is 6:30, everybody was worried. And someone was with and told it's 6:30. And you look at your watch and double checked whether what I told was correct. The point I was made that any information that you get, any opinion should be properly analyzed, double checked, and critically thought. So that is the important thing. The speakers today, the presenters today, are with the right technical background, but all other professionals. Actually, OP is enriched with about 32 professions and 52 member organizations. We have representative here. Not only that, they are outside professionals and other stakeholders have already participated. I can see that well attendees who are here. So please look at this information and analyze and give the right recommendation to the authorities. So that is the thing, exercise we have to make today. So before coming to the proceedings, I must tell you that all the valuable attendees, you can join the discussion while the thing is going on. Speakers are speaking, and you can send it to the chat box and it will be presented. After their presentation, each presentation, they will answer your related questions. And also, end of the 5 presentation, there will be a question time and panel discussion where these discussions will be also again taken up, and the vocally they will answer. So that is the thing. So ladies and gentlemen, we will move to the proceedings. Let me introduce our first speaker, going to talk about the facts about the human health, how this problem affects the human health, myths and reality about the impacts of agrochemicals on human health in a public health perspective. Professor Indika Mahesh Karunatilaka, he got his MBBS from Columbia University and master's and doctoral degrees in Dundee University, and also the fellow of FRCP, fellow of Royal College of Physicians in Edinburgh. and he is the first ever professor in medical education, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, and currently the head of the Department of Medical Education. He gave the leadership to a professional Sri Lanka Medical Association, all the medical professionals. He's also a vice president of OPA. So he had the right background to talk about this. And he's not only the academic, he has a lot of experience in the field. And as a research, he has published authored more than 50 publications and peer-reviewed international journals and over 150 research presentations international and national level. And here is one of the President Awards awardee for the scientific publication. So, Professor Npk, to talk about whether we are going to get the poisonous food plate, or what are the perceptions that we have with our perceptions, our conditions, talk about facts and myths. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson, past President Samanwara Sultana. I'd like to thank the Sri Lanka Association of Agriculture as well as the OPA for this very kind invitation to join with this very important webinar on a very timely topic. And first of all, I have a disclaimer to make that I don't have any expertise related to agriculture other than at ordinary level that was about several decades ago. Having said that, agriculture is something that is very close to my heart. I was born in Kurunagala area, which is quite well known for agriculture, especially the paddy cultivation as well as the coconut. And during my childhood in 1970s and 80s, I have seen how the agriculture, the population and the farming population, their work, the lifestyle, so on and so forth. Having said that, a lot has changed during those 30, 40 years. All these have changed. This is from my backyard in the center of Maharagama, the mango tree that I have lovingly cultivated without much use of, say, chemical fertilizers. And during this time period, maybe quite a useful hobby as well, because with the current lockdown situation, and home gardening and home farming can be something very useful for everyone if they have time and the energy, especially in a situation like that. And also it could be psychological, also something that is very much beneficial. However, having said that, what we need to do to feed an entire nation is quite different from this approach. So today we'll be discussing the approaches related to health and nutrition, related to based on some work that I was also involved in, like Mr. Varusutana previously mentioned. One project that I was involved was the Ministry of Health and the World Bank. That was in 2016-17, the INPART project, that is integration of nutrition promotion and rural development, which is basically the focus was integrating the nutrition development, the farming with economic development in a sustainable way in rural communities. And there were several valuable findings and also a lot of information to improve the current system. And later last year, as the president of Sri Lanka Medical Association, one of my focus areas was food safety and food security. However, having said that, during last year, as all of you are very much aware, a lot of focus was on COVID-19 control. Still it is. Still there were some opportunities for us to focus on the area of nutrition and also the nutrition promotion. One example was what we developed last year to certify the coconut oil in Sri Lanka. Again, mind you, this was long before the current aflatoxin issue came. So there were several interventions that we managed to do during the SLMA last year. And similarly, with the Asia Pacific Academic Consortium Public Health, which focused on the public health aspect in the region, there were a lot of work related to nutrition development in this region in terms of guidelines and other recommendations and so on and so forth. And similarly, related to the development of discipline of nutrition in medicine, then I had the opportunity to get involved in the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine in developing the MSc and MD program in clinical nutrition. However, all these are small contributions. When we think about health, health is a very broad area. And some of the areas that may be relevant to today's session may be nutrition. And we are talking about the double burden of disease. That means on one hand, we have infectious diseases, and we have a very serious example at the moment in terms of COVID-19. And there is another epidemic coming in terms of non-communicable diseases. Then there is the environmental aspect and the socio-economic aspect. All these things involve that health is very much multidimensional. It's not only medicine. Actually, medicine plays only a very small component in health. And there are many other stakeholders who play a valuable role when it comes to health. And that is very much illustrated in the Sustainable Development Goals also. The Sustainable Development, today also we are talking about the sustainable agriculture. There are many areas that are linked, like the food safety and the occupational safety, food availability, so on and so forth. So, improving health and improving nutrition, there are challenges. In Sri Lanka, there are many challenges related to nutrition, where the sector of agriculture can play a major role. For example, still Sri Lanka has malnutrition, anemia, and other micronutrient deficiencies. This is in spite of improvement in many health indicators. Still, we have undernutrition. For example, if you take children under 5 years, 17% are still underweight, and 11.2 are stunted related to the height, and 13% wasting, and 2.3% suffer from acute severe malnutrition. Now the situation could be even worse due to the current COVID situation. That's one hand. On the other hand, 1 out of 4 of every Sri Lankan is overweight, and 1 out of 10 is obese. So we have the double burden of malnutrition. Undernutrition in one aspect and overnutrition in other aspect. How can we address these challenges? This is not something that the medical field or even health field alone can address. It's multi-stakeholder. And there are other areas like socio-economic factors come into play. Therefore, we need to go for an evidence-based approach, and quality assurance and regulations are important. Similarly, education and capacity building at all levels are important. So I will focus on those guiding principles when we discuss how we can address the health challenges and the nutrition challenges, how we can get other sectors, especially the agriculture sector, involved related to this. So those are the 5 guiding principles that I'll be focusing on. As I have mentioned, health is not only Ministry of Health, not only us doctors, not only medicine. It is multi-stakeholder. When we talk about nutrition, there are several stakeholders: agriculture, environment, the government administration, private sector, then education, water and sanitation, livestock, fisheries, plantation, economics, so on and so forth. So there's a huge range, what we call multi-stakeholder involvement. Then we talk about social determinants of nutrition and health. Again, very important. It's not only giving medicines. The socio-economic aspect comes into play. Now here in this diagram, you can very clearly say agriculture and food production is a major factor that is related to the social determinants of health. Similarly, unemployment, economic aspect, water and sanitation, education, all these matter. So we are talking about a very complex interplay between all these different factors that will have implications on health, and definitely the agriculture and its products, especially the food products, and also the possible impact maybe on nutrition and the environment, and also the sustainability. All these factors play a major role when we talk about the social determinants of health and how we can improve it. So, as we saw, seen during the previous slide, agriculture and nutrition are very closely linked. For example, when we talk about food security, the definition is again, so many criteria there. The reliable access to sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. So any of those criteria are lacking, that means the food security is affected. So food security is not just food safety, but all these aspects: reliable access, sufficient quantities, affordable, nutritious. Then socio-economic aspect is very closely linked. And about the future, what are the different agricultural techniques that could be used to improve nutrition? So how can we make these decisions related to agriculture and nutrition? Again, the next guiding principle is that the approach has to be evidence-based. We have to evaluate the evidence very carefully and very clearly. As we are aware, there are different levels of evidence. The lowest level could be expert opinion. Sometimes there could be even lower level of opinion where even non-experts might provide opinion based on maybe their clout or power that they are having. Then as you go along the research level of evidence, the first is expert evidence, then there can be individual case reports, then there can be observational studies, but the higher levels could be randomized trials, or highest could be systematic review. So when we are evaluating the evidence that are presented to us, we have to very carefully and analytically go through them and identify what is the strength of the evidence that we are getting. And we are talking about sciences. Sometimes there may be pseudosciences also. That could be kind of camouflage like sciences. That was very much observed during current COVID situation, where different unproven treatment modalities were proven without any evidence, and sometimes they were accepted. Therefore, rational decision making is very important. It is important in health and it is important in agriculture. So, talking about the sciences and pseudosciences, I just go through some very common myths and try to analyze them. So I have identified 7 areas, 7 myths. The first one is Western knowledge is not suitable for Sri Lanka. We had our traditional knowledge that is adequate, but the Western knowledge is not suitable. What we have to identify is there's nothing called Eastern science or Western science. Science and knowledge is a growing body of evidence that has grown and evolved over time. At one time, East was providing a lot of inputs and a lot of contribution to it. As time went on, due to the economic development, industrial revolution, the pendulum has shifted to the West. And now probably slowly it may be shifting to again the Far Eastern side like Japan and China, so on and so forth. So we can't say Eastern science or Western science. There's nothing like that. It's a scientific that has been evolving over generations. That is what we need to follow. That scientific method may have components of new knowledge. It may have components of traditional knowledge, but we have to evaluate the level of evidence and take rational decisions. Myth number 2. The plant products without using agrochemicals means safe food. Not necessarily. Obviously, the contamination can occur. Residues might occur from pesticides because any chemical can be harmful. I think the experts who are discussing after me will go into further details regarding the level of residues, so on and so forth. But that is only one aspect. If you take the food flow up to the availability, it has several steps: growing, harvesting, then transport and delivery, then storage and preservation, purchasing, preparation, cooking, holding, serving, storage, and even reheating. So during any of these steps, there can be adulteration that can happen. Pollution can happen. Therefore, food safety, definitely it has to be ensured during the growing phase. There's no doubt about that. That's why there need to be good regulations. The next guiding principle of the guidelines and regulations and recommendations, that's there. Having said that, food safety has several steps. And ideally, it's a must that the safety has to be ensured in all these steps, not only one step. And this is another research finding. I think other presenters will also show this. This shows that over time, the pesticide residues that were there on fruits and vegetables has gone down with time. So this actually a positive factor. A positive factor to show that the regulations and control is working to a certain extent. It may not be ideal, but having said that, we need to give a chance for the regulatory and control systems to develop. And it very clearly shows the need for regulatory and control mechanisms. Then, are we healthier without chemicals? Can we exist only with natural products? Now, if you take very simple slide, Sri Lanka's life expectancy. Currently, it is around 77 and over, and it is on the increase. This is due to several factors, including facilities, health facilities, education, nutrition, so on and so forth. In maybe before 1950s, actually, where a lot of health facilities or other sophisticated antibiotics, such as penicillin or other medicines like insulin, have saved millions and millions of lives and has increased the lifespan and the quality of life. Therefore, medicines have played a major role. And when you talk about medicines are essentially chemical. There's no doubt about that. Medicines are essentially chemicals. And there can be adverse effects. Any chemical, if taken more than the prescribed amount, will lead to serious toxicity or maybe adverse effects. That's why in medicine, when you take about the medical management or the patient management, there's prevention. We always say prevention is better than cure. And we talk about non-pharmaceutical management.
Officer Indika, you have about 5 minutes left, not 15 minutes, but 5 minutes. But you can make a presentation. They're about approximately 5 minutes.
Okay. Having said that, yeah, there may be situations where medicines in the chemical form may be essential. There may be certain situations that the lifestyle or the life cannot be saved without going for those medicines. So here we talk about rational use of drugs and medicine, where we use them judiciously in a rational way when it is required. Again, having said that, overuse can leads to undesirable effects. Therefore, we need to go for rational effects, and therefore that's why we need to go for the regulation and controls in medicine. Same thing if you take plants also. I think again the similar picture from again my home garden. You can see the plant has been affected. And when I asked from one of my colleagues who is an expert in agriculture, I was told it's a bacterial disease. So again, there could be non-chemical management, chemical management that has to follow. So there is place for everything. What is required is the rational use. Okay. Then the natural products are not carcinogenic. Anything can be carcinogenic, whether it is chemical or natural. Very good example is even sunlight or certain plant toxins. You are talking about aflatoxins or mushrooms. So all these areas. Again, what is very important is the need for screening, monitoring, and regulation. Okay, organic fertilizers are safer than agrochemicals. Now, if you take agrochemicals, there can be risk being a chemical, but having said that, when you talk about organic fertilizers, it's obviously a biological process. So the presence of microbiome is unavoidable, and possibility of even inorganic material cannot be ruled out, like heavy metals and so on and so forth. And because of the need for larger quantities, making monitoring, it makes even more difficult. I'm not saying that organic fertilizers are bad, but there are challenges. There would be challenges. If you take, this is a picture from Assam in India, which produce tea. They produce more tea than Sri Lanka. And they are gradually moving towards organic fertilizers, but gradually, over time. Similarly, Bhutan which is actually very secular country and different from Sri Lanka, they are also gradually moving towards organic fertilizer, and that is one of their long-term objectives. So it's not impossible, but with a well-planned and a gradual, rational, methodical approach. Then important food items, are they always safer? Now, if there is reduction in food availability, if you have to import food from other countries, are they safer? Again, the answer is not. This again is a research done by experts in agriculture, which shows that sometimes imported food, depending on from where, sometimes their pesticide residues can be even more than what we have locally. So again shows the need for regulation. Okay? And traditional dietary patterns, are they always healthy? Now, having said that, I have to say that there are many positive aspects in traditional practices and traditional dietary patterns. However, traditions and culture evolves with time. For example, now if you take the Sri Lankan culture, a lot of Sri Lankan farmers in the past, they used to take a lot of rice, a lot of starch. They needed that to get the energy. But now the lifestyle has changed and even farming has changed. Now if Sri Lankans eat the same amount of starch and rice, they will have NCDs. And that is what we are having at the moment. And similarly, traditionally in Sri Lanka, the food consumption, the vegetable and fruit usage is very much less. Less than 5% of that is required. And those are practices has to evolve with time, because we need to adapt to the current situation. While keeping the good practices, we have to adapt to the current situation. And actually, Japan is a great example, good example to show how a country can blend the tradition and the technology to ensure the good nutrition and food safety for their citizens. So again, in conclusion, multi-stakeholder involvement is very important. We have to go for evidence-based approach. Quality assurance and monitoring regulation, very important. Similarly, you have to educate and develop the capacity at all levels, from community to decision makers, for the rational and evidence-based decision making. Quality assurance and regulations, important every aspect, and capacity building. We have to go for a balanced, unbiased perspective. We should not go into extremes. One extreme is that there's no issue in using fertilizers you can use in an unregulated way, which is not correct. At the same time, totally eliminating agrochemicals could be another end. We have to go for balanced and unbiased perspective, considering all the advantages and disadvantages and risk and benefit. Health and nutrition, very broad area. All of us need to get together, respect each other, learn from each other. Therefore, what is appropriate is a gradual and methodical move towards sustainable agriculture. And that would lead to beneficial effects in health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Indika. It's your wonderful presentation. It's very informative, very clear presentation. I hope the attendees, participants got a lot of information and insight from Professor Indika. Thank you very much once again. You emphasize on the fact of the evidence-based approach, and it should be a scientific. From we have to understand from pseudosciences as to how you understand the science and the pseudoscience. And thank you. And you will have a time to have an interaction with after the next couple of presentations. As time flies, thanking on behalf of OPA and SLIAG, Professor, once again, we appreciate your presence here. Thank you. We will join in the question time after this. Thank you. Let me next move to our next presenter, Professor Saman Dharmakirti. The Saman Dharmakirti is a professor of soil and fertility and nutrient management, and affiliated to the University of Peradeniya. He's a head of the Department of Soil Science, Faculty of Agriculture. He has worked in the Rubber Research Institute. As I mentioned at the beginning, these presenters have actually not only their strong academic background, but very strong background in their field of experience, because he has worked at the Rubber Research Institute of Sri Lanka for 23 years, and as academic for 7 years, with more than 30 years experience, soil fertility and the plantation crop and annual crops management. And he has published 150 articles, which are 40 plus are peer-reviewed journals, and he's pioneered in bio research of Sri Lanka process for cell patents and biocar technology, and is currently spearheading on multidisciplinary, multi-institutional research project to reduce chemical fertilizer usage in Sri Lanka under National Research Council funded the mega grant. And also he is a US Sri Lanka Fulbright scholar, as well as a Queen Elizabeth II as a scholar at the University of Winnipeg. Professor Dharmatilaka is the right person to talk about the soil nutrition, and I believe it's your responsibility to give us these professionals the truth about the nutrient, soil nutrition, plant nutrition, whether it's a synthetic fertilizer or whether it's a organic fertilizer, because it's your field of specialty. Professor Professor Dharmakirti, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope that everybody can hear me and can see my slides.
Yeah, it's visible.
Thank you. And at the outset, I should thank the Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture for inviting me to give my insights on the potentials of organic and inorganic fertilizers in providing plant nutrients for agricultural systems in Sri Lanka. And also, I know that this is a webinar for OPA, and where diverse group of professionals are listening and taking part. So I think from a agricultural point of view, how I see this potentials in organic and inorganic fertilizers for providing plant nutrients is important. Let me start my presentation by this policy document. In the Vistas of Prosperity, our national policy document, in chapter 5, page 39, it mentions we are going to do a revolution in use of fertilizer. And at the same time, in same paragraphs, it says that we are going to produce food with no contamination, with harmful chemicals. So when we see something in under the paragraph of revolution to use in fertilizer, and also food with no contamination from harmful chemicals, one would definitely make a link that the fertilizers are harmful chemicals. In fact, agrochemicals, when we talk, there are two aspects of it. It is one is pesticide and the other one is chemical fertilizers. So pesticides, ladies and gentlemen, are meant to kill somebody. Pardon me if I use a hard word in here, but it is meant to damage insects, pathogens, plants. That is how the pesticides are. But for chemical fertilizers, they are meant to nurture the plant, to provide nutrition to the plant, to provide plant nutrients. So that is how chemical fertilizers are sort of evolved in the nature, in this process. So when we look at the chemical fertilizers that we use in agriculture systems today, these are the most common chemical fertilizers: urea, ammonium sulfate, TSP, MOP, and then diammonium phosphate and ERP. And you can see the chemical formula that is given, and they are very simple chemical formula, and they will provide different forms of plant nutrients for plants, and the rest of the stuff are kind of will be very much less toxic to the environment. Having said that, chemical fertilizers, of course, can contain some impurities. For example, if you take urea manufacturing process, you have biurate, which is a phytotoxic, and therefore we need to reduce that level to minimize the crop damage. And also, because of this, 4 fertilizers are coming from or extracted from minerals in the earth. They are naturally containing contaminations from heavy metals, cadmium, arsenic, chromium, and lead. And because of that, SLS standards have very stringent regulations, very stringent criteria to regulate chemical fertilizers that has been imported to Sri Lanka, and they have very stringent standards that has been put forward. And if you compare with the other countries, and you would easily recognize that these are very stringent regulations. I mean, these levels are very difficult to meet with, and so that the fertilizers imported, if correctly done, then we should be safe. And if we go to the organic fertilizers, because this is the topic these days, and recently Sri Lanka Standards Institute come up with some regulations and some standards where they have also used toxic elements, their levels, as well as there are so many other things included in these to protect the our environment and the people. They should be free from living organisms, because to protect our biodiversity and also the people. And then there shouldn't be any antibiotic residues. There shouldn't be any organic pollutants. There shouldn't be any microplastics, and there shouldn't be any adulterations from nitrogenous residues. With that, one can make a small calculation based on the quantities of fertilizers that we are going to use in Sri Lanka. And if I do this calculation, you will see the amount of trace metals or the toxic elements that we are going to add into our agricultural soils. Right? If we import this quality fertilizers from this quality organic fertilizers and apply them for one season for the entire country, and if we are going to provide these plant nutrients from chemical fertilizers with this quality, and you will see that what we are going to apply for NPK fertilizers for about 20-30 years will be applied within one season. Within one season. So this is the danger, one danger of importing chemical organic fertilizers to Sri Lanka and dumping it. So our organic fertilizers here, are they safe? Here are some information for your information. I have deleted some names at the bottom. These are from Pradesh Sabhas and municipal councils. And these are the lead and chromium values that has been reported in samples randomly selected. So even these organic fertilizers are not safe. They contain quite a lot of lead and chromium in it. And if we are to use small quantities of them, then we will have to use these low quality, I would say in plant nutrient terms, low quality organics in our systems in very large quantities. And therefore, the chances of loading heavy metals into our agricultural soils over the period of time is going to be huge. That I think we need to keep in mind when we sort of analyzing how we're going to provide plant nutrients for agricultural crops. Are we using chemical fertilizers excessively? That is the other question that I see in the media often says that we are using lots of chemical fertilizers. Now, this is from Food and Agriculture Organization statistics in 2021. And these are some developed countries, how much they are using. You can see 1,400 kilograms per hectare. Right? The lowest I recorded here is the Australia being animal husbandry based country, and they also considered as agricultural land. So that is why the per hectare fertilizer usage is low. When it comes to Asian countries, look at this scale is different now. Here from 0 to 1,400. Here we are ranging from 0 to 600. And this black line is Sri Lanka. So are we using chemical fertilizers as a country in excess? I think we are in parallel with India, Thailand, and there are certain countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam in excess. Not in excess, I mean, they are applying more than we have. And at the same time, I have seen that people are arguing that our national productivity is low, even though we apply high fertilizers. So this is not going to be the case. The data does not suggest that. So ladies and gentlemen, the topic today that I have to talk is on how we going to manage plant nutrition with organic or inorganic fertilizers. So in order to give you a better understanding on this topic, I thought I would better share some of the basic principles of plant nutrition so that you will easily understand why I'm saying something in this particular aspect. Right? So out of 18 essential elements without which plant cannot grow, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium are the most limiting elements in Sri Lankan soils. Right? And therefore, we need to provide them, and that is called soil fertility. So soil fertility definition says the capacity of the soil on nutrients in required quantities, forms, and ratios. So these three words are very important in plant nutrition, and I highlight the word ratios here because I'm going to use that word later. The ratios of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that has to be balanced. Right? When it comes to forms, nitrate, ammonia or nitrate, or potassium plus ion, or H2PO4 ion, that is the form that plant absorb nutrients. And when it comes to plant root surface, plant doesn't care whether it comes from a chemical fertilizer or an organic fertilizer, it will take up these forms. So we need to provide correct forms for plants to uptake. Right? Then there's another principle or law that all this plant growth or plant nutrition is governed by, which is called Liebig's. He's a German scientist, chemist, Liebig law of minimum, which says even if you provide all other conditions adequately, if one is missing, one growth factor is missing, the growth or the yield is going to be limited by that factor. And it has been shown years and years and years after in plant nutrition research. Right? And therefore, in order to manage these plant nutrients, all crop research institutes are going for this 4 right concept of sustainable nutrient management, where we need to select the right source, right rate, right time, and right place. And these are the type of nutrient management strategy that we need to go. When you say right source, it can be chemical fertilizers, or it can be organic fertilizers, or it can be a combination of them, depending on the situation that you analyze or you grow crop with. When you look at our soil resource is highly variable, and there are so many different types of soils. And at the moment, in 2005, Senior Professor Marpa completed his analysis on classifying soils and identified 120 soil series. And this is one of the highest variability having country in the region. So we have 120 soil series. And one of the drawback in these soils is that our soil does not have enough plant nutrients because it had been weathered over millions of years, and therefore it doesn't have the capacity to hold plant nutrients together. Even if we apply as fertilizers, they will just simply flush down through the system because it has no the capacity to hold this. Why is this? Because our soils have low clay content. One reason. Clay content, we cannot do anything, but the other very important one is we don't have enough organic matter. As you can see in these two photographs here, most of our soils are like this. And in a very fertile soil, you have this black color, beautiful soil profile, which is related to soil organic matter. And that is why in IPNS, Integrated Plant Nutrient Management, or 4R principle, we encourage always to nurture our soil with or adequate amount of soil organic matter, so that whatever the nutrients that we apply can be held together in the soil and release when the plant requires, so that it will not pollute water bodies. And if you don't do that, then inevitability is that we will be starting to pollute our environment. And one other thing, unlike a forest ecosystem, the agricultural system's nutrient flow, plant nutrient flow, is open. That is, in a in a forest system, nutrient flow is circular and closed within the system. Whereas in the agroecosystem, you take some of the plant nutrients out as yield from away from the cropping field. And because in order to complete this circle and to sustain our environment, then we need to add at least the amount that is removed as the yield back to the field. Otherwise, the system is not going to be sustainable. So at least the nutrients removed as yield must be given back to soil as fertilizers. So with that, then I will go to our main topic. So how we going to give plant nutrients? Traditionally we use chemical fertilizers, and chemical fertilizers, we know the solubility exactly. They are 100% soluble oftentimes, and we know exactly how much nutrients are there. And therefore, it is easy to make that ratio, optimum ratio for plant growth using this formula. But when we look at organic fertilizers, for example, the one thing is the amount of nutrients present in organic fertilizers are much lower when compared to 46% to 0.5 to 1.5. Therefore, we need to apply them in large quantities. But they are variable as well. From one batch to the next batch, depending on the source material and the conditions, the amount, the variability is high. That is one thing. The second thing is that organic fertilizers are not like straight fertilizers. It will not only provide nitrogen, it provides all these things together. So we need to apply the ratio that the organic fertilizer has, not the ratio that the plant requires in the given particular crop soil system. That is the second problem. And also the third problem is, here we know the solubility and we can calculate exactly at what time how much should be given. But here the release rates of these nutrients from this organic material depends on the soil conditions, environmental conditions, and the root soil interactions. Therefore, we need to understand how these different fertilizers are released. Different organic fertilizers release their nutrients in a given system, which is another difficult task. When it comes to a compost requirement or the organic fertilizer requirement, national requirement, you can easily calculate using a piece of paper and the amount of nutrients removed from the yield, taking that as the minimum requirement, which is not correct, I must say, which is not correct. And I can see that at the moment people are calculating like that, but which is not correct. But anyway, if we take that and to supply at least that amount, we can back calculate how much compost is required, for example, which is the now available organic fertilizer. And if I calculate that with this type of compost, 1.5% nitrogen, 0.5% phosphorus, and 1% potassium with a 50% efficiency, and I need at least for 5 crops, paddy, corn, potato, tea, and coconut, we need 18 million tons of compost. we are requiring them in very large quantities. And if you can come up with a very good quality compost with 5%, then we can reduce it up to 3.3 million tons. How much we are producing? We are producing close to 1.2 million at the moment. And so we have a humongous task to meet this requirement if we are going to use compost or solid organic fertilizer. That is one thing. The second thing, usually I talk about the balance of nutrients, ratio of correct balance of NPK ratio. Right? In order to provide nutrients, we usually balance nitrogen content of the nitrogen requirement of the crop with compost fertilizers. Now it is 100% match with these quantities. Now, since we have to apply the given ratio that the organic fertilizer comes with, now we are applying more than required phosphorus content. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, phosphorus is one of the culprit which pollutes our surface water bodies and leads to eutrophication. And that is one of the major issues in upcountry vegetable cultivating areas at the moment. And these soils, if we are going to apply this compost fertilizer, we are aggravating this problem, phosphorus accumulation and eutrophication significantly. The other thing that I want to make, let's forget about these higher values in potassium. You can see if we apply these quantities, at least for potato crop and coconut, we are supplying only 53% of potassium and 42% of potassium for coconut. Remember the principle, Liebig's law of minimum. Plant growth, even though we supply them in adequate quantities, the plant growth and the yield is going to be limited by limited potassium content. So it is not that easy to manage a plant nutrient requirement using a compost or fertilizers that are currently available, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to skip that slide and I'll come, because of the time limitation, very quickly. And people want some evidence. What if we use organic fertilizers, what's going to happen to the yield? So this is one of the classic example, one of the only one long-term organic, inorganic or chemical fertilizer comparison that is in Rice Research Institute, Batelegoda, which is now about 20 plus years. You can see this red line is only with organic fertilizers, organic manure. And then the green line is with nitrogen chemical fertilizers. And if you apply this together, then you can get a slightly higher yield as well, right? So it says that on average, about 24% of yield drop if we are going to use this organic matter in an environment like Batelegoda. This can be vary depending on our variability in the country, in the soil resources. And similarly, I can give you enough evidence on that. And this is for using cattle manure and compost for vegetable over 4 seasons. As you can see, chemical fertilizer alone treatments and compost alone treatments, which drops a yield for about 13 to 60%. Mind you, this rate is 40 tons per hectare. So in my calculation, I was using somewhere around 5 tons per hectare to calculate the heavy metal loading. And there are similar experimental evidence available in the Department of Agriculture. And this is again another situation where cattle manure and vegetables have been used. So with this conventional type of organic fertilizers, we will not be able to get the expected yields, ladies and gentlemen. And this is another experiment that is ongoing with my postgraduate students. And it also clearly says that adding organics plus inorganic fertilizers give you a better yield. So under different cropping systems, we need to cropping and soil systems, and in a different environment, we need to find the optimum fertilizer rates to be established. So we don't know yet what are the optimum rates to get the maximum yields, and while also protecting the environment, which is a big concern at the moment. So what is the way forward, ladies and gentlemen? What I think is one of the major drawback in the current system is that providing of fertilizer subsidy for chemical fertilizers. And remember, I said our soils are very poor in organic matter, and therefore we need to force farmers to apply fertilizers, organic fertilizers. We cannot do that because these chemical fertilizers are given free to farmers, and they don't bother about improving fertilizer, soil organic carbon stocks. They just simply add chemical fertilizers. So we need to rethink this subsidy on chemical fertilizers. So organic fertilizers should be locally produced, and I am a strong believer that we should not import any organic fertilizers from other countries and dump in our clean environment with heavy metals from other countries and made available for farmer fields. And as I mentioned, the traditional organic fertilizers that we have, we cannot do this business. So we need
Your microphone is muted, or we cannot hear Mr. Professor. Professor Dharmakirti, your voice is not heard. Your mic is muted, or right. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dharmakirti's connection got disconnected. Professor Dharmakirti's connection was disconnected, but it doesn't matter. He has completed his presentation and gave the recommendations the way forward, a strong recommendation about the agro ecosystem and the forest ecosystems they are trying to compare, and the outflow, how it can be compensated. And yeah, strong recommendation of the, yeah, some reservation. Professor Dharmakirti, you are back. You can
yeah, I am back.
Yeah.
Can I make
sure, yeah, please. Yeah.
May I know from where you didn't hear me? I got disconnected.
The last point, a couple of points in the your way forward, your recommendations.
So I hope that I made the case for inventing quality organic nutrients should be improved, and therefore for that we need to do some innovations, and for that research and innovations has to be strengthened, and liquid and granule organic fertilizers from locally available resources has to be produced, and that is, I heard that it is going to happen. And biofertilizers, biostimulants, and waste recycling has to be, those research has to be strengthened. And waste is a very good source of plant nutrients, and we should be able to develop technologies so that we can isolate only plant nutrients from those wastes and put them back in our agricultural fields. Waste handling is a very critical issue because it comes with some other contaminants as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if I
mentioned, Professor, you have mentioned about anything about, you mentioned about the biofertilizers of these also. You can close your session, but you can take it up in the question time. and they have perception or also some belief that biofertilizer and organic fertilizers are the same. If you can give a bit of a definition, and you can wind up your speech for the time being, and you can rejoin at the end.
So biofertilizers are different kind of fertilizers that provides plant nutrients. For example, organic fertilizers, they have nutrients in it. But biofertilizers are organisms that can convert, which are not available for plants previously. For example, we have enough nitrogen in the atmosphere, about 78%, but plant cannot utilize that. There are microorganisms who can convert that into ammonia and nitrate forms so that plant can take up. So that is the type of biofertilizer that I am talking about. And there are phosphorus available in the soil that has been sort of bound together into soil particles. We can use microorganisms to dissolve that and make them available for plants. So these type of areas of research has to be strengthened. Biostimulants are something else where it will promote plant growth by not providing nutrients, but by some other means, some hormonal activities, right?
I believe that still the biofertilizers, we have less information, or we need the more research and more information about that. Introduction of biofertilizer arbitrary might pose, I mean, it may be counterproductive, or will it be a product?
Biofertilizers, if we can come up with a effective biofertilizer, we can make use them. Only problem with biofertilizer is that they are not going to be effective each and every soil crop situations equally. Now for chemical fertilizers, if you apply, if you get it dissolved, it is going to be equally effective in all other places. But biofertilizers, it is a microorganisms that we are going to apply. That microorganism has to survive in that particular environment. If somebody comes from outside to your home or area, people will, I mean, not people, but general thing is happening is we try to expel him. Similarly, when microorganisms comes into a natural environment, artificial from another environment, it has to be compatible with that environment. We are not encouraging biofertilizers to be imported from other countries, which is a great disaster. So we never sort of encourage any living organisms to bring into the country and apply it as biofertilizers, which is at the moment, according to Plant Quarantine Act, it is prohibited to bring any organism containing thing into Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Professor Saman Dharmakirti, for your excellent presentation. I think most of the doubts been cleared because the expert in the plant nutrition and the some myths that we have about biofertilizer and organic material and fertilizer and the chemical fertilizer. This information is option, and we can rejoin at the end. Thank you very much once again for your excellent presentation. Thank you. Then we must move into next presentation. Now, our next presentation, if you take agrochemicals, the fertilizer and agrochemicals as weedicides, insecticides, and fungicides, mainly 3 categories. There are many other categories also as well. Useful for plant protection, because if you have the nutrient into a plant or crops, when they get ill, they get sick, the plant should be protected. That is in the hands of plant protectors or plant protection experts. To talk about this matter, impact of the pesticides on the crop protection in Sri Lanka, the needs, challenge, and prospects. We are going to invite Dr. Lionel Nugalia. Dr. Nugalia also has a very strong academic and industrial background. He's a retired entomologist and the Rice Research Development Institute of Sri Lanka, that is Batalagoda, where all our agriculture scientists, most of our agriculture is in nature. and is more than 30 years experience, I believe. Also, he's a professor in agriculture biology in University of Ruhuna, and he's a former fellow of Royal Entomological Society and also fellow of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture. He's a board member of the Board of Study of Plant Protection and the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya, an associate editor of Tropical Agricultural Research and Extension Journal, University of Ruhuna. He has a great experience. He's an entomologist that work locally and internationally. And let me now invite from Dr. Lionel Nugaliyad. Also, is acting acting Secretary General of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture. Over to you, Dr. Lionel Nugaliyad.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you very loud and clear. Yeah, no problem.
And also the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice speaking to you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now, my topic is on pesticides, crop protection, need, challenges, and prospects. And this is the order of my presentation. I'll start with pest and pesticides, pesticide usage in Sri Lanka, pesticide residues in food, control of pesticide act, pest management for green agriculture, our vision. We all know plants and the associated organisms. They have been living more than 300 million years on this planet. And we are the newcomers to associate with plants. Saman, can you hear me? Saman?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
clear, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. So if you are going to manage the associated organisms like pests, diseases, and so on and so forth, we have to live in harmony with the crop plants. That is the theme of this presentation. How to live in harmony with the pests, the so-called pests, diseases, and so on and so forth. Now, sometimes the word pesticides not being used very often now. I don't know why. So in some places I see agrochemicals instead of pesticides. And pesticides are classified according to the target organism, like insecticides, miticides, nematicides, fungicides, herbicides, and so on and so forth. And pesticides also categorized based on their chemistry. There are inorganic pesticides. There are two groups, natural ones and synthetic ones. Natural ones, the most famous one is diatom. I think you all know what diatom is. It's a very safe pesticide. It's a natural one. And also there are synthetic inorganic ones like sulfur, copper, so on and so forth. And then it comes to organic pesticide. There are two types. Actually, organic means these molecules, these compounds have carbon in it. Carbon, that's why we call organic. There are natural organic compounds like plant extracts, like neem, and there are synthetic ones like the ones that you always talk about, DDT, delta methane, and so on and so forth. Those are one group of pesticides that we talk on. And there's another aspect of pesticides. They are biological material. Sometimes we call them biopesticides or biocontrol agents. There are many types of biopesticides. One microbial, like there are fungi, bacteria, virus that could be used in crop protection. And also there are insects like trichogramma, and also there are predators that can feed on the pest that we are concerned of.
Dr. Nugaliyad, sorry to disturb you. If you are in a position to put it to the full screen mode, that is if you are not, familiar, you don't do it. The lower, the lowest, bottom, there is a icon.
No, I can see it. No, I thought I can.
Right.
I thought you can see it. Okay,
right.
sorry. Thank you very
good,
much.
Good. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
now
you.
my next slide is on the volume of pesticide that we imported to Sri Lanka. And these figures are last year figures. We import technical material to formulate pesticide in Sri Lanka. That's not a big quantity, a small quantity. And all these values are given in tons. And most of the pesticide we import as formulated products. In formulated products is only for pre-packing or immediately for marketing. And the total value, okay, or total value that annual value that we spend on importation is about 8 billion rupees, 8 billion Sri Lankan rupees. And maybe this value will be, actually we cannot gauge anything from this value unless we look at the other countries. Now look, China. China, annual consumption of pesticides in tons per year, that's tons. These values are not the weight of the total pesticide, but only the active ingredient, about 1.7 million. And if we divide this amount by the cultivated extent, it comes to 13.1 kilograms per hectare. 13.1 kilograms per hectare. That's the China. Their agriculture, for agriculture, they use this much of active ingredients per hectare. Now, we don't want to waste our time. Just go to the bottom of the table. Very poor Sri Lanka, because we use only 0.7 kilograms, that's 700 kilograms per hectare per year, active ingredients. Now, look at these values, and you can decide from which country you are going to import your food next time. If there is a shortage of food, are you going to import from China or from Malaysia for that matter, or India? That's up to you to make a decision. And these values given in two graphs. Now look at these values given from 2010 to 2018, and Sri Lanka is at the bottom compared to other countries in Asian region. And look at this. This is in the Western region, and Australia is the extreme end. They use less pesticides than other countries. And we all know that pesticides are classified according to WHO toxic levels into 4 classes. Class 1 is highly toxic, 2 also toxic, 3 less toxic, and least toxic compounds. And you might see when you go to buy pesticides from the market, the label, all labels, there are red labels indicating they are highly toxic, and green labels are less toxic. And look at these figures. Now, from 1985 to 2020, the number of pesticides recommended decreased in a reverse order, that is less number of red labels and more number of green labels. It indicates there's a very big development in pesticide recommendation usage in the world, and we should not think the same, should not use the same scale when it comes to pesticides. Now in Sri Lanka, look at this. These values are this year's recommended values. We have more green label pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides. Only some insecticides are yellow label, but mostly they are blue or green label. Now, the Department of Agriculture has conducted some residue analysis. This is very sensitive issue in Sri Lanka, that people say that most of the food items that we eat contain a lot of pesticide residues. And the Department of Agriculture, Register of Pesticide, have tested a lot of samples, some from commodities taken from meant for export and some local. And from 2016 to 2018 and up to 2020, all the percentage samples exceeding MR levels are given here. And you can see in the local market in 2018, 2020, not a single sample found to exceed MRL level. So this is a very good indication of the department and the farmers' attitude towards using less toxic pesticides and at correct way. And also, the department has tested 57 samples for 12 insecticides. These samples you only read are from local ones, and in imported perishable goods in blue bars. And if you can compare it here, and you will see for some chemicals, the imported ones contain more pesticide residues than the local ones. So this is a good eye opener for you to think about the imported pesticides. And now, as a summary, out of the 90 samples tested, 30 samples were contaminated with pesticides, and the results of the study revealed that tebuconazole has a higher possibility of contamination. So the department is making effort to educate farmers. This is a fungicide, to how to use it properly and follow the pre-harvest intervals. Now, when it comes to rice, we know the rice doesn't contain any pesticide residue unless somebody had any chemical to your hull. But we are concerned about the heavy metals. And the department has tested about 68 traditional varieties, or total of 68 samples containing traditional, improved, and improved rice varieties, and found that 98% they have the arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury and selenium content is less than the total daily intake. So they are suitable for human consumption. That holds true with 88% of rice in terms of lead. So we need not go into phobia about pesticides. Now, the most distressing information is nothing about pesticide, but if we are going to ban all pesticide, what will be the scenario? Now, the second column indicates our total extent is about 1.1 million hectares, and our production is about 6 million tons. And the losses, expected losses, if no herbicide, no insecticide, no fungicide indicated there, and the net production output will be about 3.5 million. So what will be the results? We will lose 2.5 million metric tons of food, and we have to import. And also, due to COVID situation, from where we are going to import this much of food to feed our nation. Okay. And to make this presentation complete, I need to mention about the act that controls pesticide regulations, all pesticides. And this act will guide licensing of pesticides, regulating imports, packing, labeling, storage, formulation, transport, sales and use, disposal of expired products, and so on and so forth. And there is a licensing authority for pesticide in Sri Lanka, and also pesticide technical advisory committee for final decisions. And not only that, we are ahead of other countries, especially Asian countries, in terms of pesticide recommendation. We have banned all POP compounds, even prior to the decision made by Stockholm Convention. I think you must be knowing what POP, it intends persistent organic pollutants. And also we are as a we have banned many of the compounds. Even India use some, still some use 23 active molecules. They are using it, and we don't use those chemicals. And also we are a partner of the Rotterdam Convention, that is PIC, and Rotterdam Convention has listed 33 hazardous pesticides, and Sri Lanka use only 2, like monocotophos and thiram. Monocotophos is a restricted insecticide used only for coconut we will control. And I also should mention that the Director General Agriculture and the Disease of Pesticide, they do their best to make the pesticide control in a orderly manner. And now what is the most difficult thing or important thing is irrational use of pesticide in the field. We have observed it. This is due to many reasons. One is risk. Farmers do not want to follow any risk. So they are risk averters, and uncertainty of present agriculture, which needs to be addressed to solve the issue. So we have to educate farmers, strengthen farmers, if you want to make use of pesticide in a logical way, in a holistic way, in a safer way, so that we can give the consumers safer, residue-free food. As I mentioned earlier, actually pest management, many of us think the chemical is the only solution for pest management. No, pest management is a complex, it's a labyrinth components. There's a biological control system, there are cultural, microbial, mechanical control, behavioral, many things. So farmers need to be educated with all these. Even now at the present, the Department of Agriculture and other institutes, they have very good programs, integrated programs called Integrated Pest Management, where we are teaching farmers about all these components in managing pests. So for pest management, what we have to do is enhance IPM tools, that is ecological engineering. There are very good techniques, and pest surveillance. We need to do a very good pest surveillance system, island-wide pest surveillance system, and forecasting. Actually, the unfortunate thing is we don't have much staff to undertake all these, our vision, and strengthen farmers' decision making on pest management. Introduce professional spray operators. This is one of the major requirements, because farmers are very old, and also the sprayers very old. So we need to somehow initiate a program to establish licensed spray operators, so that the spraying will be done in a professional way. And also we need to promote locally produced organic pesticide. That's another area. And most important thing is we need to master natural enemies like parasitoid predators. That in other countries they do it. There are institutes, there are private organizations where they mass produce these natural enemies, we call natural enemies, and market them. Is one of the easiest and best way of controlling pests. We need to get used to this, because this is very new to us. not really new, because we use natural biological control, but we have to do it in a large scale method. So I think the government will take it as a important message. And also about importing professionals. Actually, we don't promote microbial products microbes for foreign origin, because long-term environmental impact are unknown. So therefore we discourage all the pest specialists in the country, discourage is importing biocontrol agents without proper evaluation. So this is a dream. Having small insects like parasites or predators in small vials, you go to the field and open the bottle and release them into the field. This is just like spraying chemicals. Some of the parasitoids that we use in Sri Lanka, this leaf miner is a serious pest. It was a serious pest now, but we don't have, and papaya, mealybug, I think you must be knowing. And our challenge, feed the nation with healthy food. Limitation of arable, we are limited with arable land, and pest disease, weed problems are there. We have to live with them. And workforce. Many old farmers, they don't cultivate, they don't want to be in the business in another 2-3 years time. So we need to have a new generation of farmers, and our food habits also changing. We have to find answers to that. And global warming. What I'm telling about this is, now we are living with pests, and we don't know tomorrow what pest will come, like fall armyworm. We had a very bad experience, and we don't know what will happen if the desert locusts come to Sri Lanka. It is in India. It might fly to Sri Lanka to see this country, to have a visit. And finally, our direction should be strengthen the farmers, intensify safer, environment-friendly pest management tools, empower farmers for decision making, strengthening regulatory environment. So we need to prepare a roadmap with strong monitoring and evaluation mechanism, and should be addressed to the risk faced by farmers through insurance or marketing, etc. Thank you very much. My appeal, professionals, let us unite. Thank you very much. Again, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Lionel Nugaliad, for your excellent presentation
Thank
about
you.
the plant protection, and it's excellent. Finally, your message is what we got is actually pesticides usage in Sri Lanka as not as we think. It is quite less compared to the international usage.
Yes, of
And
course.
our regulation are far ahead of the others in the region, and that is one thing that we learn.
Saman, actually, they have to be actually recognize the work they do. Regulatory body, actually, is an excellent work.
Right.
If you compare with other Asian countries, we are far more ahead. We are far more ahead.
To sum up this, Dr. Nugaliad, in terms of even the residues, especially the vegetable, because it's the vegetable farmers use more fungicides and insecticides, as we heard, with the scientific evidence that you have, it's also, reasonable, but we have yet room to develop. And this information should be properly analyzed and should be presented. There was a question from the audience that these recommendations, these are actually facts, not the myths or the opinions, but based on the research and the evidence available in the market and your experience. And thank you once again for your excellent presentation. And as like doctors are managing patients in the hospitals, where the plants, crops get sick, and it is this responsibility of the plant protection experts to look after the crops. And without weedicides, pesticides, insecticides, and fungicides, be a little difficult task, like doctors do not have antibiotics. But that doesn't mean that we should overuse that. It has to be properly regulated. There was a suggestion. I think that we should think about that. It will be the pesticide will be given on the prescription by an agriculture expert who can understand the problem, and the recommendation will be given like that. Right. With that, actually, we must move to the next presentation. Thank you very much once again, Dr. William.
Thank you.
Yeah. And next presenter, Professor Jivika Viraheva. Actually, everything finally will be rupees and cents, our economy. Now the people are skeptical about our future, whether it will, without agriculture, what will happen. We are at the crossroads, and some policy decisions may have some implications. And Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture and also the Sri Lanka Agriculture Economic Association has written to the Excellency President, and even we saw in the media that they have a strong recommendation as to where we should go. And about the economic effects of import, ban and chemical fertilizer and pesticides, Professor Jivika is going to talk about this subject in the next 20 minutes. Professor Jivika, if I introduce her, she is a senior professor of agriculture economics attached to the Department of Agriculture Economics and Business Management Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. She is also a member of Sri Lanka Agriculture Economic Association. She obtained a BSc and a Master's in MPhil from the University of Peradeniya and is a PhD holder from the University of Gaap, Canada. Dr. Ms. Viraheva serves as an honorary fellow of the Faculty of Veterinary and Agriculture Sciences, University of Melbourne, Australia as well. So she has local and foreign experience, international experience. She will be able to give us an economic aspect, which is very important for us to think about very seriously. Thank you. Over to Professor Jivika.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vatsavitana, for that introduction. And good evening to ladies and gentlemen. My task today is to show you the economic effects of the import ban that was imposed to control chemical fertilizers and pesticides coming into the country. So first of all, I would like to thank the SLIAC as well as Sri Lanka Agricultural Economics Association for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this aspect. So I have organized this presentation into basically 4 categories. First, I will introduce you to the idea of banning imports and what they are and how do they affect an economy. And then I will move on to this particular ban on agrochemical imports imposed by the government of Sri Lanka about a month ago. And in order to explain those effects, I will share with you the structure of the agriculture economy, and then I will move on to short run and long run effects of this particular policy instrument. And finally, I will share with you my thoughts for a way forward. Okay, so let me first tell you what an import ban is. Okay. Import ban is nothing but a prohibition of imports. So what it does is that it prohibits imports coming into a country for a sector, and it insulates an economy from the rest of the world completely. So what it says is that the world market price or quality signals will not be transmitted to the country under consideration. So this inhibits trade gains. So countries are very, very careful in imposing import bans. They do that when it is absolutely necessary, like when you are having a problem with bird flu or foot and mouth disease, then you control imports from such countries on particular products. However, in Sri Lanka, this is not been so uncommon if we look at what happened over the recent past. But I would say that this is a kind of notorious trade instrument. The issue today is banning of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Are they really bad or hazardous products. Of course, I really do not have to explain that as an economist. The experts in the subject like Professor Saman Dharmakirti, Professor Nugaliyadda, and Professor Npk Ratio very well explained you the nature of this product. And if we use them wisely, of course, there are enormous benefits to the society. And I personally do not think that this kind of regulations are to be imposed on products like agrochemicals. And what will happen if you impose an import ban? Of course, it is already being imposed, but I would like to share with you the marginal benefits to the society from an instrument of this sort and marginal costs. So this is what we normally do as economists. We look at the current situation and we compare the cost added to this society and the benefits that we get. Okay, so if we look at import bans on agrochemicals, of course, there will be savings to the government because we were having a subsidy scheme on chemical fertilizers. The government can save on that. And this will create an opportunity for producers and importers of substitutes like organic fertilizers and pesticides. And also, we expect that the environment would be toxic free and the environmental quality will be good or better. However, these benefits can be acquired at a huge cost to the economy. Okay, the incomes of growers of paddy, tea, vegetables, maize, floriculture, they all will be affected. So it won't stop there. There will be spillover adverse effects on raw material suppliers, collectors, transport agents, processors, wholesalers, retailers, and also consumers like you and me. And also, there is a possibility of creation of monopolies, those who get licenses or powers to import substitute items can create monopolies because they now have an insulated market environment. Okay, so we actually can see that there will be huge costs, but in order to see how big are these costs as opposed to the benefits of a policy of this sort, we should have to have a good understanding of the setting or the context. Okay, so in order to give you that setting, I would like to very briefly share with you the structure of our own economy, paying a special attention on the agriculture sector. Okay, so let me move to the next slide. All right, we all know that the agriculture sector is fairly small in the Sri Lankan economy, and right now the contribution from agriculture sector is like 7%. However, if you look at the subsectors of agriculture, those who are likely affected by an import ban of this sort are quite large. So around 5% of our agriculture sector constituted by crop agriculture. Okay, so there will be a huge impact on agriculture sector with the policy of this sort. And if you look at employment statistics, around 25% of our labor force is employed in agriculture, and out of that employment, majority is in rice, vegetables, and tea. Okay, so what it says is that if something happens to these crops, there will be implications on employment and income. And if you look at income and expenditure of our households, around 80% of income is coming from agriculture sources, and we spend like 35% of our expenditure on food, meaning that if food prices go up, our food plate will be affected, because we are getting 92% of calories, 67% of protein, and 74% of fat from crop agriculture sources. Okay, so this is serious. If something happens to crop agriculture, the entire economy will be affected. Okay, and not only that, the exports and imports. If you look at our export and import structure by SITC classification, you can say that we heavily depend on exports of tea and spices. Okay, and what comes second is vegetable and fruits. So we actually have a very much connected economy, and if something happens to these sectors, the economy will be in trouble. And on the other hand, we are dependent on the rest of the world for our imports. So if there are shortages in crop production, there will be implications on import bill as well. Okay, so with that introduction to the structure of the economy, let me show you some of the assessments that I did as well as my colleagues attached to the Sri Lanka Agricultural Economics Association did. So we actually did two types of analysis, one in the short run, the other one in the long run. The short run analysis is not really an economic analysis per se, it is simple computation. So what we did was we looked at yield losses likely to be associated with moving to organic agriculture or no chemical fertilizer agriculture, and then we looked at how production quantities will change, and then we looked at our consumption pattern, our export pattern, our import pattern, and then we computed what happens to our imports, what happens to our exports, and what will be the likely effects on consumption if we do not allow imports to come in. Remember, we are having stringent restrictions on food importation as well. So what would happen to various subsectors of agriculture was the focus in our short run analysis. So let me show you what happens if there are losses in paddy sector and tea sector. And to do that analysis, we looked at the yield losses predicted by various experts, and these are some of the estimates given by the scientists in Sri Lanka at a forum held at the National Science Foundation. So what we did was that we picked a particular study done by one Sirisena and his team in 2016. Dr. Samandharmakirti also mentioned about this, and computed what happens to paddy production and rice production under various scenarios. What happens if we completely move to organic fertilizers? What happens if we do not have any fertilizers at all? Okay, so that can happen. So the estimates given by Sirisena and his team indicates that if we go to fully organic agriculture, yield loss can be as high as 25%. If we do not have fertilizers at all, yield loss can be as high as 43%. You know, huge losses. So if you convert them into production quantities, you can see that right now we are producing something like 4.47 million metric tons of paddy, and if we go for organic, it will be 3.28. And if we do not apply any fertilizers, it will be 2.5. Our consumption, if we consider that, remains as 2.4 million metric tons of rice, then there will be shortages. And if we do a simple calculation, you will realize that we will end up spending around 10 billion Sri Lankan rupees on rice imports if we go for fully organic scenarios. And if we go for a no fertilizer scenario, it can be as high as 42 Sri Lankan rupees billion. Okay, and not only that, there will be reductions in profitability and also rice consumption if you do not allow imports to come in. So wheat exports will go up. So the effects are very sizable and adverse. And if you do a calculation for tea, in fact, this is done by one of my colleagues at the Tea Research Institute, and the estimates show that there will be drastic reductions in production as well as exports. If you consider that the same quantity is remained for local consumption, you will see that the export earnings can go down by 85 billion rupees. Okay, and you will see that this will have huge implications on our trade balance, and the profitability of tea cultivation will go down, and there will be serious effects on the estate sector more than those for the smallholders. Okay, there will be implications on coconut, other field crops and spices. My colleagues at Coconut Research Institute did some calculations, and they say that there will be reductions of export earnings of desiccated coconut and other coconut products, and that value can be as large as 18 billion rupees. So this is with a yield loss of 30%, and currently around 27% of coconut lands get chemical fertilizers. So considering only that portion of lands, okay, and the effects on maize and hence chicken can be sizable, and the effects on protected agriculture and floriculture can be huge. Actually, protected agriculture cannot be practiced with organic fertilizer. You need chemical fertilizers and pesticides. However, we do not expect huge losses for pulses and also spices grown in home gardens. Okay, so that actually is a simple calculation, but we did some detailed economic analysis using a global trade model, which can accommodate what happened in different sectors. Because when one sector is affected, all the other sectors are also affected, because an economy consists of all these interconnected sectors. So what we did was that we applied a modest yield shock, thinking that farmers would adapt, policymakers would adapt, traders would adapt, and then we looked at what happens to our economy. And let me show you the estimates that we got by applying 20% yield loss across all the agriculture subsectors. And what we saw was that there would be significant changes in trade pattern. Our imports will go up and our exports will go down, and there will be an increase in food prices, reduction in production of various agriculture subsectors, as well as the sectors that are connected to agriculture subsectors like processed food and food catering. Like the entire chain will be affected, and there will be a reduction in GDP by 2.65% if crop agriculture reduces by 20%. Okay, this is serious. And there will be reductions in technical efficiencies and welfare of the economy. And finally, the economy will be contracted. You will experience a slower growth rate on top of the adverse effects of the corona pandemic. And the impacts or the implications will not stop there. Economic activities in rural areas will be contracted, and farmers find that profits would go down, farm incomes go down, and those who work in the farmers will lose jobs, and they will see unemployment, and they may start migrating to urban areas. We are not ready to accept large masses of rural people in urban areas. We are not ready, even though it is a desirable aspect. And we can anticipate increase in poverty, malnutrition, and vulnerabilities, both in rural areas and urban areas. So the implications will be huge, okay? And this is ignoring the cost of creation of monopolies with the opening up of organic fertilizer market. And also the environmental costs associated with the importation of organic fertilizers, which were very well explained by Professor Saman Dharmakirti. So looking back at the benefits and costs, of course, what I explained you, the costs of this import ban on the economy of Sri Lanka, excluding the cost of creation of monopolies. But I agree that I did not pay that much attention to the benefits of this policy. Okay, but I have a valid reason for that. The issue is that the benefits are very, very uncertain. So what actually happens here is that due to the changes in market environment and policy environment, the entire production technology will be changed. So we actually do not know what the new technology is, how land using it is, how water using it is, how labor using it is. We really have to look at all these things. We simply cannot go by the success stories that we hear. It is only a very small fraction of our farming community engages in organic farming. Okay, so we simply cannot assume that we can scale up all these technologies to 100% overnight. Okay, so that is a risky business, and because of these reasons, I was a bit hesitant to talk about the magnitude of benefits that we would realize from a policy of this sort. Okay, there are challenges in scaling up. Technology is not sufficient. You have to have favorable institutions. You have to have markets, and there is this risk of climate change and natural disasters. So extrapolation of success stories to a full organic farming is something that we should not do. And here I'm showing you the organic extent in Sri Lanka, just to say that it occupies only 2.5% of our agricultural lands. Okay, so taking this 2.5 to 100% is not a simple thing to do. Yes, with this, I would like to bust a few myths regarding the economic effects of usage of agrochemicals, and this may be contrary to general perception. Okay, one thing we see from the previous presentations is that agrochemicals are not hazardous products if you use them wisely. Okay, and if you look at the global picture, you will see that our nutrient budget is very small. We are having a low input, low output production system. And Professor Npk Ratio very nicely showed you a slide to show that pesticide residues are coming down over time. Okay, and if your stat data very clearly show that agrochemical usage, the synthetic fertilizer usage has been coming down recently. Okay, so this is something that people misconceive. People kind of think that we have been increasing usage of chemical fertilizers and pesticides over time. Of course, there was a period that it happened, but not in the recent past. And some people tend to think that import bans are ideal instruments to control something. No, it is not. So this is even against WTO rules. We are a member country of the WTO, and we are actually going against the current. Okay, import bans inhibit trade gains, and also they invite monopolies. Okay, so the entire economy can contract due to imposition of policy instruments of this sort. And also, some people think that if there is a yield loss, we can compensate farmers. But a yield loss does not stop at the farm. It spills over to the entire economy. You very clearly saw that there will be reductions in exports, there will be increase in prices. The entire economy will be affected because we have forward linkages and backward linkages to agriculture sector. Even though agriculture sector occupies a small portion of the economy, its backward and forward linkages are very strong. Like our processed food sector also occupies an equal share in the economy, which is very strongly connected to agriculture sector. Okay, so compensation of farmers will not solve the problem. Okay, and also some people think that import bans can safeguard us in terms of balance of payment. Okay, however, when you impose an instrument like import ban on agrochemicals, it will reduce the potential that we have to export something. There will be direct effects on our exports, reductions in exports, as well as we can anticipate some increase in imports because production locally goes down. Okay, so import bans can worsen trade balance and the savings from fertilizers will lead to increase in exports of finished products and imports of finished products. And as I indicated earlier, scaling up of organic technologies is not linear. Even in the entire world, this is not a linear thing, and we need the right type of institutions, markets, and adverse climate may hinder scaling up. Okay, so we actually have to have scientific evidence before we make a decision of this sort. And Professor Npk Ratio very clearly indicated that we have to go by systematic reviews to see what research tells us, not just by picking an article here and there. Okay, so a detailed scientific investigation is necessary before you jump into a policy like this. So my plea is that it is not too late I think we all should request the government to lift this import ban. So it is not worth looking for alternative instruments at this moment while keeping this ban. If we lift this, then of course we can think of some other policy instruments to achieve the policy goal that we are having, that is to have a greener agriculture. Okay, so we can gradually reduce and eliminate the existing fertilizer subsidy, and we can introduce alternate fertilizers and alternate pesticides, and we can revisit our standards. We can provide subsidies. We can impose taxes on environmentally damaging inputs and outputs, truly damaging stuff. And also we can promote marketing of environmentally friendly produce, and we can promote adoption of good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices. So we have actually jumped from a subsidy on an environmentally damaging product to an import ban. So that is way too drastic. We could have changed this subsidy to a targeted subsidy, and we could have had a phase where there is no subsidy and slowly increase taxes on this kind of products if you really think that they are causing a serious harm. Okay, but there are other instruments rather than imposing a tax. So with that, I conclude. Thank you very much again. And if you have questions, I will try to respond them through chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jivika, for your excellent presentation. I saw some of the questions directed to you, and you may answer it right away, or can take up in the discussion session. But the take home is it's quite alarming facts that with regard to the economy or potential of economy damage and serious effects, consequences with this sudden policy change. And not only the things that you mentioned, even you mentioned about the spillover effects and so on and so forth. And as we have another final speaker, let's meet back in the question time. Our next speaker, Professor, thank you very much once again, Professor Jivika, for being with us and giving an excellent presentation. We move to next presentation, that is on if the agricultural pesticides and the fertilizer ban, if the effects are detrimental. Otherwise, if you look at the good side with the organic agriculture, we have a better health and better environment. How we can switch into this towards how can move forward, and the first stepping stone to express that view, where he has the experience in the implementing such a mechanism in Department of Agriculture, where he was the director in the extension of Department of Agriculture. Next speaker, Mr. Amal Arunapriya, the former president of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture, and he was the former additional director general Agriculture Development of Department of Agriculture. He has worked as a specialist in institutional development, capacity building, the World Bank funded climate smart irrigated agriculture project also, and has worked as a Department of Agriculture as a lecturer, trainer, agriculture economist, extension officer, and administrator. For 34 years experience, ground level experience in Sri Lanka, and he's obtained the fellow of Sri Lanka Institute of, he's a fellow member of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture. He obtained his first degree BSc Agriculture and Masters in Agriculture Economics, and also his Masters in Hyderabad, and is a fellow of Institute of Agriculture. Retired additional secretary and Agriculture Development, Minister of Agriculture. Mr. Amal Arunapriya, you may explain about the first stepping stone to how we mitigate this thing and going forward. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Saman Vasavita. Can you hear me?
We can hear loud and clear, no problem.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sitana. So today, as the moderator, so first of all, let me thank to the OPA and our Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture organizing this very important webinar on the current topic, green agriculture model, busting myths and investing in the reality. So I think actually previous eminent scientists and professionals, they pointed out a lot of information, a lot of scientific evidences with facts and figures, statistical data, not opinions. So especially that Professor Npk Ratna, that medical professional. So I picked some keywords from his presentation. Agriculture has a direct relationship for the social determinants of the health. Then food, if you talk about the food security, sufficient quantities should be provided at an affordable price. Then the policymakers, the rational decision making is necessary. Those are the keywords that I picked. Again, he explained about a big myth. What? That plant products without using agrochemicals are safety food. These are the myths he talked. So thank you, Professor Npk Ratna. Again, Dr. Professor Nugaliyadda, he explained about the pesticides. Most of our pesticides are green label pesticides. Still, that means we are in safety mode. Then Professor Saman Dharmakirti, so he explained how other countries use fertilizer. In that comparison also, we are in safety mode. And he very clearly explained about the importance of integrated plant nutrient system. Then if I go to Professor Jivika's presentation, I think you can remember everything. He talked about the economic terms and gradually the fertilizer usage or everything should be reduced. This is the way to face this challenge. Then while their presentations are going on, Mr. Farad Mohammed, I saw in the chat box, he made a very good comment. So his question is, what is the alternative? And he introduce good agriculture practices. Thank you, Mr. Farad. So as you proposed, today my presentation topic is good agriculture practices, kept as the stepping stone for the green agriculture model. Ladies and gentlemen, now recently His Excellency, our President, appointed a task force. This is the Gazette notification. That is task force for the creation of green socio-economy in sustainable solutions for climate changes. So in order to accomplish this task, he mentions 25 tasks in this Gazette notification. So today what we are presenting here is totally on par, in line with, related with this 7 tasks. I will read it. So formulating and launching a program for the production of toxin-free fruits, increase food supply, identification of areas where such farming is done locally and farmers involved in such farming, increase production and distribution by popularizing such foods nationally and internationally. So this is the Gazette notification says in under 25 tasks. This is the task number 7. So today what we are presenting is totally in line with this Gazette notification task force task. So what is the objective of this good agriculture practices? Yeah, ensuring availability of safe and quality assured agriculture produce towards consumers through a sustainable farming system. That is the main objective of the Gaap program. And ladies and gentlemen, the Gaap program is not a magic. This is not a miracle. These, you can see the global Gaap. Then you can see this, here you can see my cursor, Japanese Gaap, Sri Lankan Gaap, Vietnam Gaap, then Malaysian Gaap, this is Thai Gaap, this is Cambodia Gaap, then this is China Gaap. You can see all over the world now the trend is the practicing good agriculture practices. So by practicing good agriculture practices, so you can minimize the usage of agrochemicals. So you can have a pesticide or agrochemicals or free foods. So Gaap approach is, there are 3 stages: physical approach, biological approach, and chemical approach. So finally, we use the chemical approach. So ladies and gentlemen, so I will move to the next slide because of the time limitation. So why we should promote Gaap? Being an approach that can increase the income of farmers, reduce cost of production by optimizing input use, better prices of quality, safe agriculture produce for exports, saving foreign exchange expenditure on agrochemicals. Yeah, these are the keywords: saving foreign exchange on expenditure on agrochemicals, because we can reduce agrochemicals usage in line with the existing government policy. This is totally in line with the current government policy. Providing quality and safe agriculture products to ensure to consumers while conserving the environment. So let me explain why Sri Lanka started Gaap, Good Agriculture Practices Program. I think you can remember in 2014, we experienced a bad, we had a bad experience, that fish ban. Likewise, we had a threatening, alarming signal from the Brussels embassy that they are going to, they have a problem with our fruits and vegetables because of fruit fly, availability of fruit fly. And they are telling no signs of the situation is getting better, and the number of interceptions with harmful organisms are on the rise. So then they have suggested, that the European Union has suggested so many actions to be immediate actions to be taken by Sri Lanka government. So we will see the number 3, taking urgent and concrete action to improve the current situation. And if not taken before 30th September 2014, safeguard measures we may aim at imposing import restrictions. Yeah, this is the import restriction. Then they suggest to carry out an audit on phytosanitary exports control Sri Lanka. This is the threatening. Even this alarm signal also came not because of chemicals, not because of agrochemicals, came because of fruit fly availability. Then, ladies and gentlemen, in 2015, what our Sri Lankan government did, so Department of Agriculture, under the guidance of Ministry of Agriculture, they implemented a strong field sanitation program that is conducted by the National Plant Quarantine Service. Then Good Agriculture Practices program by the Extension Training Center. So those approaches are totally succeeded because better control of pesticide incidents through IPM, limited use of agrochemical, they have increased the our quality by using these approaches. Then finally, the quality confirmed that through two European Union audits, they have confirmed: 1, improvement of phytosanitary conditions and pesticide residues below European Union minimum residual levels. This is the success story at the very first stage. Then after all the audits, European Union audits, in 2000 February, they sent us a very recommendation. So the blue underline sentence is very important. So increase the effectiveness of export controls and the certification system. The report concludes that Sri Lanka has significantly improved. This is the keyword: significantly improved the system of phytosanitary controls for exports to the European Union through the registration of producers, approval of pack houses, and creation of dedicated inspection teams. So this is the approach in some years back, Department of Agriculture with provincial departments of agriculture under guidance of Ministry of Agriculture practice. So, but throughout the departmental history, department scientists, extensionists were telling to the farmers that they disseminate this knowledge of integrated plant nutrient system, IPNS, IPM. Those are the key agriculture principles used in Sri Lanka Gaap. because Sri Lankan GAP standards are not a miracle, but practically what we can do in the field. So IPN, Integrated Plant Nutrient System, even Professor Dharmakirti's presentation also, he very clearly highlighted how we can use plant nutrient system, integrated system. So that is balanced use of organic and inorganic fertilizer. The GAP system always extension it. Researchers, they say organic matter improvement is a must, specifically with the mandatory soil test report and site-specific fertilizer application. High emphasis is given for the subsurface soil organic matter improvement. That is the base of the IPNS system. Then integrated pest management. So use of preventive measures, mechanical, biological methods, and pesticide is used as a final control measure, right? So after all this IPNS and IPM methodology, usage of agrochemicals can be reduced up to 50%. This is the most important finding statement. Usage of agrochemicals can be reduced up to 50% by practicing these good agriculture practices. For example, crop protection in the integrated pest management. So protective fence, you can see here insect-proof nets. By using even ladies' saris also, you can do this as you can do as a protective fence. Pod covering here, light traps, then pheromone traps, insect repellent lamps. Those are the things we can use by integrated pest management system. Then we will see what are the basic requirements in Good Agriculture Practices program. So there are 4 basic requirements maintained in the farm environment in accordance with the recommendations of the relevant GAP standard. Use of inputs without compromising the safety and quality of agriculture products is important. Use of inputs without compromising the safety and quality. Maintaining farm records, fulfilling the requirement for the traceability. So we always increase the traceability and accountability. So if I just read all the requirements of the GAP program, it totally covers entire farm production cycle. For example, requirements of farmland, factors related to soil and soil conservation, always soil conservation and soil part. Increasing the biodiversity of the soil part is given emphasis on this GAP program. Then factors related to seeds and planting material, plant nutrient management, water usage. Water usage also, we have to use the SLS standards, the crop protection, harvesting and post-harvest management, farm waste management, worker healthy, safety and welfare. This is a very critical issue because if you go to any World Bank project, IFAD project, FAO project, or any foreign funder project, there should be a social safeguard measures. So in this GAP program also, in closing to the with related to the international standards, worker healthy safety is ensured. Then farm records for the traceability and accountability. Then in this good agriculture practice system, national standards body, SLSI standards we use, and Sri Lanka standards, they have published their volumes for fresh fruits and vegetables, and paddy published in 2019. So these are this criteria the farmer has to practice to be a GAP farmer. Ladies and gentlemen, this program was launched with the technical support of many stakeholder organizations. For example, Department of Agriculture, Sri Lanka Standards Institute, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, Institute of Post-Harvest Technology, Export Development Board, Faculty of Agriculture, specifically University of Peradeniya, the private sector and stakeholder holders. Then you can see there were multi-stakeholder approach to design the GAP program. That's why this is we are talking today. So there's a success story. This is a second success story. First success story was the European Union ban we could control. This success story that in 2020, Department of Agriculture, they have done a very nice pesticide residue analysis in locally grown crops, right? especially the upcountry and low country vegetables were analyzed for pesticide residues, right? They did the research in Nuwareli and Puttalam district. Sample size was 60. Good GAP 23 samples. Then non-GAP 37 samples. The number of insecticide and fungicide tested was 36. Then altogether 2,160 replicates were tested for the residual effect, residual levels. Then out of 36, residues of 6 pesticides were detected in non-GAP samples. You see, out of 36 samples, residues detected 6 pesticides, right? Then out of 36 residues, only 1 pesticide was detected in GAP samples, that is acetamiprid, right? Ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing is all detected levels are below the International Codex and European Union minimum residual levels, right? That is the important statement I have to make, because that even our Professor Indika Karunathilaka's presentation also, he very clearly mentioned from 2016 up to 2018, our pesticide use was significantly reduced. He has shown the slide, I can remember. Then what are the challenges in GAP program? So inadequacy of testing facilities, soil samples, water sample testing, mobile product testing kits, then shortcomings of government policies and regulations related to safe and quality assured food production. Even though 2015, Ministry of Agriculture, Department of Agriculture and Provincial Department of Agriculture started this GAP program, that government intervention is not enough. Thus, government priority emphasis should be given from top level, His Excellency level, Parliament level, priority should be given. That's today what we present, today what we propose. So then less awareness among consumers, right? Lack of research on alternative pest control measures, lack of collaboration among universities, Department of Agriculture, relevant institutes. This is also a very important point. Now there are almost, I think if I am correct, I think I'm correct, there are 9 agriculture faculties scattered in Sri Lanka. So all the agriculture faculty, there are eminent professionals, eminent scientists. So, but unfortunately, no proper system, no proper fund flow system to give government, department funds, ministry funds to the faculties to conduct collaborative research. So that official linkage should be developed. So, and the funding is also a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, after completing all these requirements, the GAP farmers are eligible to have this certificate. These certificates includes category vegetables, extent, what is the extent, then GAP number, then number of production sites, for example, how many polytunnels, or where it is, right, with a QR code. These QR codes, right, with a smartphone, you can trace where is that farm, what is he doing, which season, all the farm level records are available in this QR code. That means the GAP process always ensure the traceability and accountability. So with this brief presentation, let me conclude my presentation today. This thank you slide also give a message. This is the Tom EJC mango, right? Includes Sri Lankan GAP logo. This is the Sri Lankan famous food city. There's a food corner of food city. There's a Sri Lankan GAP logo, vegetables. So with this presentation, let me conclude my presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amal Arunappriya, former president of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture. Your excellent presentation. Then we have hopes with GAP that we can achieve the greener agriculture model systematically. This will be a first stepping stone, as he mentioned. And he also mentioned that it's very obvious in many other presentations we understood, even in terms of the usage of agrochemicals in Sri Lanka, we are in the safe zone. But there are myths about the usage of agrochemicals. And even if FAOStat says, all statistics says those are scientific and evidences of evidence. But there are these, what you all have given us, showed us are all, you have the sources to refer, and those are scientific evidence. So we are quite rightly in the, safer zone, and we have, I think, phobia about with regard to most of our foods. But food may be contaminated with other sources, but we have understanding now. I think today we have a diverse professionals has taken part in this conversation. This webinar, they will be cleared about certain doubts, myths, and I hope that they are fully clear about the certain thinking that they have conceived in their minds. And there was a question also whether the Gaap farmers could be subsidized, because Gaap farmers need some additional support in terms of their, the requirements additional to the normal farming system. Will there be a subsidy scheme for the Gaap farmers? Is there some kind of support for the farmers, for the Gaap farmers? There was a question pointed to you. You may ask this question or even in the next session. Now we have come to the last, and I think this will be a more important session.
Zaman, yeah. Before going to that, may I say one statement? So all we get together and we say this is so-called proposed green agriculture model we should keep as a noble goal. Definitely, no argument with that.
Absolutely.
But we have to traditional transition to reach that noble goal, right? So this Gaap program is a stepping stone, first step to reach that noble goal. That is my final conclusion.
Yeah, I think even Institute of Agriculture, when they wrote to the president, they said they appreciate everybody, actually all sensible professionals in this country appreciate that move, that we should go for greener model, green agriculture, and safer food and safer environment. That's no argument about that. That's a noble objective. To achieve that, as to how we should go forward, what is our roadmap, that is left to the professionals to discuss and give this proposal to the policymakers. And I believe this is a very good forum to discuss this matter. This information can be properly analyzed, critically thought, critically analyzed by in the other perspectives, also by economists and various other professionals in this country who have joined here today also, and could give the recommendation. I have to thank OPA also. OPA have already established a special committee to evaluate this matter and give the recommendations to the government. And I hope this is the first step that we should take this forward with many more discussions and debates, and we must get correct information without confining into the opinions and the dreams. So thank you very much once again. All the speakers make the presentations, the very great, quite nice presentation. So we'll move into the panel discussion. I like to invite, request General Secretary to give actually access to all the panelists, the co-hosting, where they can come into the panel, and there may be questions, and the attendees, valuable attendees, can send the specific questions are there. They can directly send to the chat box right now. We have a short time now. We are left with about maximum 10 to 15 minutes because even the time for the Zoom session will all be over. So I hope that we will have few questions. Before coming to the panel, before coming to the our attendees, I have a few questions gathered from the chat box, and also will ask one question from is Professor Karuna Tilaka. So you, Professor Karuna Tilaka.
I'm here.
Yeah, I hope that all the panelists, all speakers are on their, they can open your microphones and the videos. That can you can be visible. The question about that, you have done excellent presentation, and there was a question that how this is a situation where now we understood with all the presentations, so almost all presentations says it's not that dangerous, although it is said that our foods, our plate of rice, what we have is highly poisonous, but actually situation, if you look at the facts and the statistics, it's not that. So what may be the reason? What may be the roots? The food may be, you know, there are perceptions in the, you know, the general public that cancer are directly caused by contaminated food as a carcinogenic material. Is it? Do you think that it comes directly to the chemical fertilizer or pesticides, or there may be a bio origin, the organic origin things, or alcohol or the other things? How do you analyze this situation? Because there's a general understanding, or the media, or there are many media presentations I have seen that our food is contaminated with fertilizer and agrochemicals, over contaminated, and it's MCDs, and especially the cancers. Cancer is the cause for the cancer is the fertilizer. That question I like to ask on behalf of the attendees.
One thing we understand that contamination and adulteration can occur at all levels during the food chain and the food flow. So like I have mentioned previously, from production to harvesting to transport, storage, at all levels it can happen. So we can't give an exact answer or kind of a, say, assurance that the food contamination is not there, because it can happen at all levels and it has to be tested at all levels. Now, it seems that there are good regulatory mechanisms at the production level, but we can't give the same guarantee at all other levels, that including all the steps in the food chain. So at the moment, I mean, we can't give an exact assurance that the safety is there. At the same time, there aren't any conclusive evidence regarding, say, carcinogenic. I mean, if you take the carcinogenic aspect, anything, whether it's chemical or maybe natural, if taken in inappropriate amounts for longer duration, it can lead to cancer. At the moment, there is no conclusive evidence related to the food material, but even though there are some kind of assumptions, because one thing is it might take time and you need more research.
Yeah.
So
Professor Karunatilaka, the other thing now, if you take your medicines, medicine that you treat patients, also maybe certain levels contaminated with impurities that may cause maybe not the active ingredient that you have, but associated things. And the quality of either whether it is agrochemicals or the plant protection chemical or the medicine that you use for the treat patient have the same principle. The impurities should be, so we have to go for quality and the higher regulation. That is the final answer, I think you have. Yeah, and also there's another question. Actually, a doctor asked me before, and if you have a drug addict or a person addicted with heroin or something like that, we can't ask them, okay, you use the heroin. We have to treat him. You have to stop him using the abusive substances. So what is the management practice that may be also applied to the plant protections? I like to ask, now if a person has been taking abusive substances like heroin or something like that, what is the management that you do? Are you going to stop directly, or are you going to gradually you take him away from?
So it may not be directly comparable because we are talking about the management of a person and management system. But having said that, that person has been used to a particular level of, say, the chemical imbalance within the body. So obviously, if you take immediate action, drastic action, then the results may be counterproductive because that person's system has used to certain amount of abuse. So that will lead to, say, counterproductive, what we call, say, the withdrawal symptoms, which can be very much drastic also. So approach has to be gradual and methodical. So in that way, it can be comparable because the systems also are used to a particular level of stability. So if you are changing that, it has to be a gradual change.
Dr. Nugalia, for you, you're also talking about the statistics, and you also got some information, scientific evidence about the Sri Lankan context, and agrochemicals are not. And also you mentioned that in case of outbreak like locust or the armyworm or BPH, actually the brown plant hopper kind of attacks, the availability of this plant protection chemical is a must. Do you agree? You have any comment to mention about these matters? Dr. Gulad, are you in? Right. She'll move to. There are some other questions from the Professor Dharmakirti. Are you there, sir? Professor Dharmakirti, there's a question that you said that organic fertilizer, organic manure, can supply the basic elements Npk, and the question is microelements. Can the microelements be also equally supplied by the organic manure?
Right. I think I answered to that question in the chat box area, but still, since you raised the question again, yes, one of the advantage of applying organic matter to soil is we can increase the release of micronutrients in addition to our traditional NPK and other fertilizers. But what I want to emphasize here is anything that has to be applied if it is in need. If it is not in need, we should not. So for that, we need to analyze our soil and get a soil analytical report and identify which elements are required for the plant in a given system. So because organic matter contains micronutrients as well, over a period of time, if we apply, we can boost the micronutrient pool in the soil so that it can release micronutrients slowly when the plant requires. But the problem is, for example, let's take zinc. In most of the paddy soils, zinc is deficient at the moment, and we recommend to apply zinc. Can we provide that zinc requirement by, as some says, that 1,000 or 2,000 kilograms of compost fertilizer during that particular growing period? So those are the things that we need to look into and take into consideration in designing and management approach for plant nutrients. So yes, of course, organic materials contains lots of trace elements, and we can make use of them in improving soil in micronutrient availability.
Thank you. Thank you. One more questions, and you can give the last take-home recommendation. One recommendation. Before that, I'll ask one question from you, Saman. This but we have high organic soils with high organic material, where especially bog and half bog soils, and fertilizer the requirement with this, even the organic material is very high. There is a questions. So in the plant, nutrition point of view, how we manage with the organic soils, with the half bog soils, boggy soils, where the organic material already high. There are places in Sri Lanka. Can it be only because it is already full of organics? Organic matter. Will do these give the required results? Tell me yes or no, for the benefit of the.
Because we have been used to give answers not in yes or no forum. That is only in the court. But let me analyze that situation with a very brief period of time. And remember, I showed the slide where agricultural systems are not closed. Things are moving out from the system, and for which we need to supply from outside plant nutrients. It is the same principle that we apply here in bog soils and half bog soils as well. Even though you have quite a lot of organic material, it doesn't say that it has the capacity to provide the nutrients that are outflowed from a system.
Right. Thank you. I think we got the message. We got the message, because there are perceptions, there are misunderstanding also. And what is the final message? We want to conclude this session, because I have to give it a chance, each and every presenter, that give the take-home message, because this will be critically analyzed again by the other professionals. Yeah. Yes, Saman.
I think at the moment what we are facing is obvious yield reduction that is imminent in the system if we are right away move from chemical to organic fertilizers. But as our noble task is to go for a greener agriculture, and we need to step in the right direction. I think that step has already been taken. Only thing is that we have not monitored. What I'm talking about is we need to have an integrated plant nutrient management system in place, and we need to start practicing that, and we need to enforce farmers to use that practice. Then only we can go for our noble goal of green agriculture.
Right. Thank you very much once again for joining. I will invite the other, because the time is running fast. We have left with few minutes. I'll come back to Professor Indika, his final words. Before that, there's also a question to clarify from his side, and a final message you can give. Professor Indika, if you are there, there's these CKDU, the chronic kidney disease. Is there a direct relationship? You have a sufficient evidence that CKD is caused by agrochemical, because some people say it's a Kushikarmika roge or agro-renal disease or whatever. So do you have a sufficient evidence right now with you?
Actually, I have had some research, one systematic review also within the group. In summary, what we have to say is the evidence are inconclusive. Currently, the CKDU is considered as multifactorial. According to the largest systematic review, it's considered multifactorial, including several factors like environment, and it can be heat stress, or maybe the water that you are consuming, or maybe pesticide, or maybe heavy metals. Some studies have basically directed towards, one is cadmium, with association with cadmium, but not other heavy metals, mainly cadmium. Some studies, but other studies are not conclusive. So what I have to say is it's not very conclusive. At the same time, in Sri Lanka, the source of water, like the water with, say, heavy and like the water with dug wells, compared to the surface water, has shown to have some impact, because of the water contamination with maybe with different metals. So all these factors taken together, they are very multifactorial. So you can't really point towards one aspect. But having said that, best would be to go for regulations.
can we have can we speak to Professor Jivika? You have the final take-home message to our audience.
Okay, but I would like to say is that right now we are already in trouble. Like every single country in the world is in trouble with the corona pandemic, and we should not sacrifice our economic gains through restrictive policies. We cannot afford to do that. In fact, what we try to do is to get our food systems to work to feed the nation, and as part of our population is suffering from undernutrition, another part is suffering from overnutrition, obesity, and overweight. So we really have to align our system to address the present day needs. Of course, command and control measures like import bans were very popular way back, but right now these are not the instruments used by many countries. And rather than going by ideologies, we have to understand the present day needs and work accordingly, using novel and smart policies to regulate our food system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, because we are in a very serious situation in terms of the economic suffering that we are now undergoing on. So we must not worsen. That is your message. And Mr. Amal Arunapri, on behalf of SLEAG, also you can one single recommendation, and we can move into next is actually vote of thanks by our General Secretary, Madam Ruchira Gunasekara. Before that, I'd like to ask panelist presenter Mr. Amal Arunapri, a last word that you can give us.
Thank you, Saman. Thank you. Thank you all the presenters. Thank you all our participants. So my final statement is to reach the green agriculture model as the noble target, there should be a systematic and gradual transition without affecting negatively to the food security in Sri Lanka.
Right.
So always we have to do a overnight. You can't transform this whole agriculture system into a green model. So there should be a gradual transition. So in that direction, the Department of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, all provincial departments of agriculture, and all agriculture faculties should get together and make a way forward. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much once again. We have a food safety, and also we should have make sure our food security, our food should be secured. So we had a better future and a greener tomorrow. And we are going to conclude this session. Before that, may we invite Ms. Ruchira Gunasekara, General Secretary, OPA, to propose a vote of thanks to all the attendees and everyone who attended here. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Mr. Saman Varchari. Eminent panelists, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all. On behalf of the Organization of Professional Associations of Sri Lanka, I take this opportunity to thank those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar on green agricultural model for Sri Lanka, busting myths and investing in the reality. Jointly organized by the Seminars, Workshops and Programs Committee of the OPA and Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture. At the outset, I thank our eminent panelists, Professor Saman Dharmakirti, Professor in Soil Fertility and Nutrient Management, University of Kelaniya, Dr. Lionel Nugaliadda, retired Professor, Agricultural Biology, University of Ruhuna, Professor Jivika Viraheva, Senior Professor of Agricultural Economics, University of Peradeniya, in Sri Lanka Agricultural Economic Association, Professor Indika Karunathilaka, Vice President of OPA, and also immediate past President of Sri Lanka Medical Association, Mr. Amal Arunapriya, former Additional Director General of Department of Agriculture, for their participation in the very important webinar despite their very busy schedules, spending more than, I think, 3 hours for making excellent presentations, sharing their knowledge and insights with us. I would also like to thank Mr. Saman Wadusavithana, immediate past president of OPA and vice president of Sri Lanka Institute of Agriculture, for his contribution as a moderator and also for his guidance in making this webinar a reality and a success. We are also thankful to Mr. Raja Korale, chairman of the seminars, workshops and program committee of the OPA, for his contribution towards this webinar. Our sincere thanks to Engineer Shanti Senrat, President of OPA, office bearers, past presidents, and members of the Executive Council and the General Forum for their advice and the support in organizing this webinar. Our sincere thanks to the audience for their very active participation. Thank you for your patience as well, for spending, I think, more than 3 hours and by being with us. We also appreciate the hard work of the staff of the OPA Secretariat, headed by Mr. D.N. Seniviratna, in organizing this webinar. I thank you all for once again, and good night.
Thanks once again, Ms. Suchira Gunasekara, for your kind support, the administrative side also. And I hope that we have to continue this dialogue with OPA. OPA actually paved the path to all these professionals to interact. And thanks that you have already established a committee to discuss this matter, specifically this matter, and give the recommendation to the government, the policymakers. Thank you once again for your kind support. Thank you. And good night, all of you.